Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
We are facing the most serious threat to public media in history. Right now, the White House is trying to rescind already approved funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, money that keeps stations like ours running. Without it, essential local journalism, trusted reporting, and podcasts like this are all at risk. If you value public media, speak up now. Visit boisestatepublicradio.org/funding to learn more and take action.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Vaccine Advisory Committee is meeting today and tomorrow for the first time since Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. removed all of its sitting members and then appointed new members who are more aligned with his beliefs. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, also known as ACIP, is expected to vote on vaccine recommendations for the fall, as well as discussing other vaccines, including vaccines that are given to children. Dr. David Pate, the former CEO of St. Luke's Health System and the co-author of the book, Preparing for the Next Global Outbreak, is joining us today to talk more about this. Dr. Pate, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Gemma.
And remember, folks, if you have a public health question, send us an email, idahomatters@boisestate.edu. So, Dr. Pate, last week we talked a little bit about RFK Jr. basically firing these 17 members of ACIP and now putting about, I believe, 8 new members on. Before we get into all of that, remind us exactly what ACIP is.
Right. So when there is approval of new vaccines, that there is a process that starts with the FDA, in which the FDA reviews the safety and efficacy and determines whether it should be approved. The FDA has its own advisory group similar to ACIP that is outside experts that review the data and give input to the FDA. Once the FDA has approved a new vaccine, then it goes to ACIP under the CDC. And what their job is to determine who should receive this newly approved vaccine, how often, when, at what ages, et cetera. And that's their job. And then these outside experts make their recommendations. That goes to the CDC director, who then can accept or reject that recommendation. But once accepted, then that becomes the guidance. And the importance of that guidance is what goes into the vaccine schedules. That determines which vaccines are typically covered by insurance programs and by the Vaccines for Children program that is responsible for vaccinating the majority of children in the country, a little bit over 50%.
So, Dr. Pate, is this the same group that during the pandemic, we were always kind of waiting to see about them meeting to see, if a COVID vaccine got approval, if it did, when it would be available, et cetera?
That's it. And so typically those meetings would be held in June, like right now, and with the idea that they would review all the data and determine whether a new formulation should be recommended, and if so, to what groups for the upcoming fall.
So is this also the group then who decides, you said kind of a new variation with the flu shot? Because, we usually, that becomes available in the fall. And I understand normally in the United States, we kind of wait to see what's going on in the other hemispheres. And then these recommendations start coming out. So is that also what this group, historically looks at?
Exactly correct. And so that they would also be making that recommendation of which of the various options for flu vaccines should be approved for which age groups. For example, we have some vaccines for flu that we typically just use in children, others that we just use for seniors. So they would make all of those recommendations.
So they are meeting today and tomorrow, as I mentioned, and they are expected to discuss vaccine recommendations for the fall. Now, with that said, Dr. Pate, many experts are speaking out publicly because they're concerned about the anti-vax views that not only does Robert F. Kennedy Jr. hold, but many members and many new members of this advisory group now hold. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't want to make assumptions that these folks are anti-vax. I don't want to put that on them. All you have to do though is kind of Google them and look at their beliefs, and they do tend to align more with the current Health and Human Services Secretary.
Well, yes, physicians and scientists and public health experts alike are waiting anxiously about this meeting. There are a number of things about this meeting that are extraordinary, that have not happened in the past. And unfortunately, while the secretary indicates that he is doing this to restore confidence in vaccines. Frankly, most of us are very concerned about how this will further damage confidence in vaccines. So, the kind of unheard of things are, first of all, we don't currently have a CDC director and to approve their recommendations. And what happened that we talked about last week was Secretary Kennedy, as you mentioned, summarily dismissed all 17 members of the ACIP, which, to my knowledge, that has never happened before. Um, and so we have lost a lot of expertise and a lot of people very familiar with vaccine processing, manufacturing, distribution, vaccine issues. We've lost that. The group of 8 that has been put in place, a few of them we have very little information about, and I will be anxious to see how they play out during the course of today and tomorrow, because we just really, they're quite surprising, because just the fact that most of us don't know who these people are. Um,
Hmm.
but there are several others who are quite notorious, and that I certainly have already been aware of through my work in trying to fight vaccine disinformation. And in fact, 2 of the worst were made co chair of the committee. So that's not a good sign. Another irregularity is that they are allowing an outside person to come in and present on a topic that, frankly, is already well decided science. And this person holds views that are not consistent with vaccine science. And she is being given the opportunity to present to this committee on this subject, and that deals with mercury in vaccines. And that is a big warning sign. Most of the materials and presentations that go to ACIP are from the experts in the various agencies that present the work of work groups and how they have interpreted the data, put that together for the presentations. So we're expecting some nonsense when it gets to that part of the meeting later today on the mercury subject. So there's just a lot of reasons to be concerned. And then something that I didn't see coming already this morning when they met, the chair announced that he is creating 2 new work groups, one that will review the vaccine schedule for safety, which this has already been extensively studied. And I think that one of the things that those that promote anti-vaccine information or disinformation tend to capture on, because it confuses the public, is saying that we're giving too many vaccines, too many shots.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the issue. The actually, we are giving more shots than we did decades ago, but those shots are much more refined, and we give children far fewer antigens today than we used to. And so I think they're going to use this to create confusion. And there's just a lot of reason for us to be very concerned. We'll, of course, wait and watch and hope to be proven wrong, but it's very concerning.
So, Dr. Pate, can we go back to this presentation in regards to mercury? Um, because this, as you said, has been debunked. Um, However, with that said, didn't this idea come up because when vaccines were first being made available, decades ago, generations ago, some vaccines did have this in it, but since I believe what 1997, that's not put into vaccines. Am I correct on that?
Pretty darn close. So
Okay.
you're right. The mercury, but we need to be clear. Mercury comes in a lot of different forms,
Uh huh.
and the specific formulation used in some vaccines over time was thimerosal, and this is um, a formulation that is not absorbed efficiently into the body like when we know about pregnant women and we warn them about eating certain fish that they might get
Mm-hmm.
high mercury levels. This is a different formulation. It's one the body does not accumulate like that chemical form of it. And the reason it was put into vaccines was a preservative to help combat the possibility of bacterial or fungal contamination. And early on, back in the years you were talking about, there was speculation, oh, well, that mercury is causing autism. Well, the studies have resoundingly shown that's not the case. There's no association. But out of an abundance of caution, since really it's been almost a quarter century now, this formulation of mercury has been phased out of vaccines to the point
Mm-hmm.
that today it is in very few things, some antitoxins that we use, but really the only vaccine today that has it is the influenza that is in the multi-dose vial, where there is that risk of contamination. But that accounts for about 4% of the influenza vaccines used by doctors today. Most of it is single pre-filled syringes or single dose vaccines. Those do not have mercury in them, and so it's not even really an issue except for the small amount of multi-dose vials. And again, it is far less mercury, even if the body could accumulate it like the other form of mercury. It would be far less than a can of tuna in
Mm.
getting this vaccine. So it's greatly overplayed. The good news is that even if, as I suspect, they vote to prohibit the vaccines containing that, it really will have little effect because we almost have no vaccines with it anymore anyway. So I
Okay.
think it just feeds into this disinformation campaign, but and it's a lot. It's much about nothing.
So before we go to break, I also want to talk quickly about RSV because according to a draft agenda, and it was published online, folks, so you can go look at it. The committee will hold a vote on the maternal pediatric RSV vaccine and RSV vaccines under the Federal Vaccines for Children program. H- um, how concerned are you, Dr. Pate, that they may pull this one? And I ask this because as a mom, I mean, I got the RSV vaccine during both of my pregnancies. My baby that was born in November, I mean, he's going to be 14, he did get RSV at about 6 weeks old. And I credit it for not being worse because I was able to get vaccinated. But I'll tell you, it is scary when you have a baby with RSV.
It is indeed, especially when that infant is in their first year of life. And it is those children, particularly, who disproportionately end up in the hospital and even the intensive care unit. The nice thing about vaccinating the mom when pregnant, when expecting a baby at the time of year like you were, when we typically see RSV cases start to rise,
Hmm.
is that not only are we protecting mom to keep you healthy and to prevent you from getting infected and giving it to the baby, but in the first 6 months, the baby's immune system is not really able to make its own antibodies. And so when you're pregnant and you're vaccinated, you are transferring your own antibodies to the baby that do hang on and can protect that baby. And further, if you breastfeed the baby, you will continue giving that baby antibodies. And so for RSV, but also the same thing for COVID. Those vaccines during pregnancy not only protect moms who tend to get much more sick, but also protect those newborns. I don't understand our war against pregnant women that's happening in this country. I really haven't figured this out. But it's going to hurt young children, and we're going to eventually see it in the data as if this goes on for years and we're causing more infants to get critically ill or die.
So, Dr. Payne, I want to turn now to another issue that they are bringing up during this meeting. So, Dr. Pate, one of the things that was supposed to be brought up during today and tomorrow's meeting is the COVID-19 vaccine recommendation for the fall. That, however, is not on the agenda. So, what does that say to you?
That is a good question. I found that highly curious myself and wondered why. And of course, to my knowledge, the CDC has not issued any explanation why not. Of course, this follows the another thing that was highly unusual. The secretary coming out just weeks before ACIP was to meet and indicating that the COVID vaccine booster, the updated shot rather, that will be available this fall, is only going to be recommended for seniors, for those that are high risk, and he indicated it would no longer be recommended for pregnant moms, which is really the most shocking of the whole thing. So this is all peculiar. I am assuming that the reason they're not voting is that RFK Jr. is just going to set this. This is just highly unusual, really unprecedented, and I really don't know exactly what to expect, and I don't know how to explain this. There are materials given to ACIP about the COVID vaccines. I was very pleased in going through there. There's some real good science, and the work groups have come out with a good product. But there's not going to be any vote. It's very peculiar.
So, Dr. Pate, does that mean that the COVID vaccine may still be available in the fall? However, this goes to what you mentioned about this group sets what vaccines and boosters would potentially be covered by insurance. So, therefore, might be able to get it, might have to pay for it, which then impacts so many people who cannot afford to pay for a vaccine.
Yes, that is my suspicion of what's going to happen, and I think there is one caveat that I'll mention in a second. But I think the other thing that this recommendation is problematic is, of course, we have heard a long time from the anti-vax community. Health freedom, people should be able to make decisions. Well, they're taking decisions effectively away from people.
Hmm.
because frankly, it's not just your vaccine choice should not be decided just based on the chance that you're going to die. First of all, we are very poor at predicting that in children. In older in adults and older folks, it is much more predictable who would be at highest risk of dying. With children, many of the deaths are in children who appeared to be perfectly healthy. So it takes away that choice effectively for parents because, as we talked about, these vaccines are expensive and can certainly run over $100, and there are going to be parents that just can't afford that. And as I said, already more than half children in the United States get their vaccines through the Vaccine for Children's program. But if that's not recommended by ACIP and the CDC, then it may not be covered. The one caveat I have is I was very pleased to see that some insurance companies have announced that they are going to base their coverage decision on the science and not necessarily
Mm.
restrict it to the ACIP recommendation, which I think is, first of all, a bit of a relief, but it's also very smart. If a pregnant mom gets COVID, that expense will far outweigh the cost of the vaccine. So it really makes financial sense for insurance companies to cover that, and certainly for some of these children. So it may not be as bad as I fear, but in these days, I just there's just a lot of things
Hmm.
happening that are worse than I actually feared. So we'll see.
So I want to spend the last few minutes I have with you today talking about another thing on the agenda and something we haven't spoken about in the last couple of weeks, and this is about the measles. So the agenda does state that this group will also discuss the MMRV vaccine. This is part of the measles vaccine. This is in children under 5 years old who get this. Now, we should note that Kennedy has made unsupported or misleading claims about the MMR vaccine. In fact, he has falsely claimed that the measles vaccine leads to deaths every single year, and in fact leads to illnesses caused by the disease itself. Health experts have said there is zero evidence of those claims. So, Dr. Pate, not only are they going to be discussing this, so who knows what they're going to come up with. What I want to spend the next couple of minutes on is the fact that we have a measles outbreak going on still in the United States. It's more than 1,200 cases, to the point that the United States may actually lose its official measles elimination status. So, get us updated on this and what that means if we lose that status.
Well, so Gemma, this is something that many of us couldn't have possibly imagined when we did get our elimination status back in 2000, I think it was, because we had figured that we would learn the lessons of history, we would learn from science, and that we would not go backwards. And here we are. And in fact, there was an article by the Idaho Statesman today that Idaho has the lowest reported vaccination rate. I qualify that reported because our state allows people to opt not to have the vaccine status reported. And we think some of those children are actually vaccinated. But it is very low. I don't believe it's as low as those numbers would suggest because we should be having some rampant outbreaks. However, as you said, this measles outbreak across the country, it's now hit the state of Washington. It won't be long before they appear in Idaho, and we'll see what our vaccination likely rate is. Because if it is anywhere close to as low as reported, we're going to have major outbreaks. Uh, what the shame about this is that it's the whole reason that the measles vaccines were developed and why we had such high uptake back in the day was because while many children did seem to be fine after getting measles, measles killed a lot of children in the United States. And it also can cause some very serious complications. And the other thing that we noticed is that measles has an unusual negative impact on the immune system, such that children may be at increased risk of adverse effects from other kinds of infections in the years following their measles infection, in which they have to rebuild that immunity. So this is going to be a huge disappointment, and it's going to be a huge risk to those mothers that get pregnant who aren't vaccinated, and also to young children before they reach the age where they can be vaccinated.
And Dr. Pate, I have like less than a minute with you, but as you said, Washington has already reported a case. I believe Utah reported a case of measles. So, in your opinion, I mean, it is just a matter of time until we
Oh
officially
yeah,
have cases reported here.
and not that much time. I will be actually shocked if we make it through the summer without hearing of cases of measles here in Idaho. Certainly, I wouldn't bet anything that we could go the rest of this calendar year without a measles outbreak, but we'll see.
All right. Well, as always, Dr. Pate, so appreciate you. We've been talking with former CEO of St. Luke's Health System and the co-author of the book, Preparing for the Next Global Outbreak. I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.
Planet Money helps you understand the economy. We find the people at the center of the story.
Garbage in New York, that was like a controlled substance.
We show you how money influences everything.
Tell me what you like by telling me how you spend your money.
And we dig until we get answers.
I had a bad feeling you're going to bring that up.
Planet Money finds out. All you have to do is listen. The Planet Money Podcast from NPR.